So first off, I just discovered that Textractor works on anything, including Korean. Intuitively I thought, last episode, I don't see why it can't work on just any language, because all it does is just hook the text. Well, turns out I was right. Works on just any language because it hooks the text. So, what does this allow me to do? Well, it allows me to Google Translate text of, say, a Korean game, or potentially a Japanese game. The problem with Japanese is that the type of games that I want to play that are Japanese might have a platform that makes it harder to hook text. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I know, because I have done it, and so I know for absolute certainty, because I have carried out this procedure, that I can hook the text of the Korean game that I want to play with Textractor. And I can also Google Translate that text without me having to type it in anywhere. It just hooks the text, grabs it, Google Translates it. And because it happens in a window, I can also capture it with OBS. So I can put the game and my Textractor side by side in the recording. And so you can actually get the text in the recording. That way, it can serve as kind of as subtitles in a way. I don't have to figure out what the translation of the Korean text is best at, the best translation for the Korean text later. Then go back and put that in as subtitles that I either overlay in the video or paste into YouTube's subtitle thingy. That will save me that work pretty much as well. So that's okay. I figured out how to do that part of this level. Good. So that's convenient. So I haven't messed with Japanese yet, but yes, Textractor will work on Korean. So that has now been learned. So yay, kind of a small victory there. And you might go, well, is your motivation to learn how to read Korean significantly dampened by this fact? And the answer is yes, very much so. Because the machine translating tool makes it such that you go, oh, this works. Now, there's some language purists who are really fans of certain languages where they'll be like, well, Google Translate is kind of a meme. It's Google Translate, and it's going to create some awkward, broken translation sometimes. And it would be best if you actually learned the language, and then you'd be able to catch the mistakes that Google Translate makes, and you just understand what's being written there, what the author meant by it much better. The thing is, though, it's going to take me, despite how bad Google Translate is and how bad its reputation is, it's going to take me, so much time to learn the language better than Google Translate can translate it, that it's not particularly worth it. Now, up until the day in which I do this recording, I'm going to continue to do my learning of Korean. I'm still going to do my memorizes for howtostudykorean.com, read about the grammar, finish the Duolingo, do all that stuff. I'll keep doing that day by day up until the day I start recording, and then continuing all the way till the day I finish recording the last section of Danganronpa Another 2. So I will keep going, but it's very unlikely that I'm going to know the Korean well enough that it's going to really matter that much when it comes to the very end. But I'm not going to just throw in the towel and stop trying to learn Korean. But I'm slightly less motivated to continue because I've learned that the machine translation doesn't work for Korean. So that kind of decides it, though, how well I've learned Korean by then. When I get to what I'm going to call Season 3, then most definitely the Korean's going to start. And that's when I'm going to start doing the Korean. Yeah, that's it. The reason why I say Season 3 instead of Season 2, even though I haven't recorded the second game for Season 2, is I decided that for Season 2 I'm just going to do The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. which is the 2 games in 1, but I'm going to do both of them, so it's going to be like 1 game for me. So I'll do that for Season 2. If you're confused what I mean by seasons, I'll explain that later. And then Season 3, then the Korean will be broken out. So that's how it's going to go. So haven't messed with Japanese machine translations yet. But some complications that may come with that. So there's the games that I'm going to have to translate. So I didn't say it last time, but the games I'm going to need to translate from Korean are Danganronpa fan games. So Danganronpa Another, Danganronpa Another 2, made with RPG Maker 2000, and RPG Maker 2003, I think, respectively. Actually, I think it's not made with an RPG. The second one's not even made with RPG Maker at all. I forgot what it's made with. So the ones that I'm going to want to translate from Japanese are 12 Riven, the Psy Criminal of Integral. If you haven't heard of that, that's the 4th Infinity game, and the Xbox remake of Ever 17. And because that's an Xbox remake, I'm going to have use Xenia for that hopefully that works. On Xenia's website, it does list it under the compatibility list. So supposedly it has been shown to be compatible with Xenia. So for that, but I don't know if an Xbox game you can hook text in. That's going to be an interesting experiment. Trying to figure out if that can be done. So yeah, I haven't really started that hard on learning the Japanese either. I've done some practicing of some kanji, which are more important than anything else when you have to read it. Anyway, the whole point of that whole first topic was good news, can hook the text and use Textractor to machine translate Korean, and have successfully carried out that action, successfully demonstrated on my end. Okay, second thing, talk about the seasons and stuff. So, Season 1, interlacing of Never 7 with Your Turn to Die Death Game by Majority. Season 2, interlacing of Ever 17 with The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. I've recorded Ever 17 all except for the last episode because I have to find all the paths and then get the last poster unlocked and do this big plot summary of it that's going to take likely 8 hours, I'm not kidding, to do, because that game is so dense. And like background and science, and it's gonna be really ridiculous how I get to do the last recording of that. But except for that last recording, I have done all the recordings of the gameplay for Ever 17. I have not started The Great Ace Attorney yet. So that's Season 2. Season 3 is going to be interlacing. So Season 2 is probably going to start somewhere around July of 2022. Season 3 is going to probably be interlacing of Remember 11, which is the 3rd Infinity game, with Danganronpa Another, the Danganronpa fan game by Linju, and then Season 4 is going to be me trying to try to figure out how it's probably going to be trying to do the Xbox remake of Ever 17. So it'll be like a very non-blind playthrough because I'll already have played through the PC version, and this is just me. I have the physical disc of it, by the way. This is me just seeing what's different in the Xbox remake, because I know there's a lot of things that are different. And then that's going to be and that's going to be interlaced probably with Danganronpa Another 2, if I can get that to work. Then 5, that's 12 Riven, Psy Criminal of Integral, interlaced with Who Knows. We'll see what happens. It probably is going to be Ace Attorney Investigations 2, because that's another Ace Attorney I haven't seen gameplay footage of. So, like, Investigations Miles Edgeworth 2. And then it's probably, then after that, Code 18, depending on how the localization works for Code 18, with Dual Destinies. And that's just because the Ace Attorney games I haven't seen all the gameplay of are the Greatest Attorney Chronicles, and very much so the Greatest Ace Attorney Chronicles. I know close to nothing about that. The second Miles Edgeworth game, and Dual Destinies. Those are the ones I haven't like been spoiled the entire thing of, like all the other ones. Anyway, so kind of reporting on the watching. Well, people, this is kind of interesting to me, but it isn't necessarily a goal. People interested in actually watching some of these weird, obscure games that are generally tend to be Japanese. Your Turn to Die. I'm tending to get about 8 views or so on some of these later episodes, which is much greater than the amount of views I got on the Bionicle videos when I first uploaded them. Of course, once I got to about roughly September of 2021 of last year, I started to get 30 views a video. So I started to pick up once I started uploading Bionicle the Game GBA again. And right now, most of the views I get per month on my videos come from my older Bionicle videos and not the new ones. But that's pretty, like, for like the first uploads into a new like category, new regime. Getting that much is kind of high. However, Never 7 got close to 0. I'm essentially getting, beyond the first episode, 0 views on all of them. And this might be because simply Your Turn to Die is something that people YouTube search sometimes. And so, because it's a game that people know about, and so they'll search it and then they'll find my Let's Play of it by a YouTube search. In contrast, Never 7 is way more obscure, and so people are less likely to search for Let's Plays of Never 7. And so, yeah. Another thing about Never 7 is that the hook, the game, like some people just like, the hook into the game is, the game doesn't hook you in as well. So you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, this looks like something really good and interesting, something I want to watch, from the first few minutes of the game. It's very, I don't know how to describe this, but it just doesn't really like set up a situation super fast. In fact, it almost never doesn't set up a situation at all. It doesn't have a very good hook. And you could argue that, and so, yeah, if it doesn't hook you, the game itself has a hard time hooking people into a Let's Play, essentially. Now, to me, that's kind of scary, and the reason is because Never 7 isn't necessarily well regarded as a masterpiece or a particularly good game. It's not bad, but it doesn't have this big following that really, like, puts it high on a pedestal, that really extols it very well as a great piece of artwork. But why is it interesting? And they say this at the beginning of the Never 7 playthrough, is it's who the scenario writer was, right? Scenario writer is the person who would eventually go on to make Zero Escape, and is a very well-regarded scenario writer named Kotaro Uchikoshi. So like, you play Never 7 typically if you're a fan of his later works, you start a fan of the author, right? You sort of trust that it's going to be good even if the beginning doesn't hook you in well because of who wrote it. And I moved on, as I already said, to play the next game in the series that continues on from Never 7. It's called Ever 17. And that game is extremely highly regarded amongst the ones who play it. It's essentially, it's like an opus. It is a masterpiece game, or a masterpiece story of Kotaro Uchikoshi. And it's something that a lot of his later games borrow from. He reuses ideas from it quite often. And so, it's kind of a big deal. And it's something that you kind of want to spread around, like to get that more well-known people to know about it. But it has sort of the same problem as Never 7 does, is at the beginning it doesn't hook in real well. So it doesn't have a good hook. It takes a while to set up the scenario. And even when they set up the scenario, the characters are sort of nonchalant about the scenario that's been set up. And so, like, the first episodes of my Let's Play of Ever 17, they're not going to hook in well. They're going to have the same problems Never 7 does. And the agenda to spread the word around of Ever 17 with the Let's Play of it, which I don't really have until after I played it and discovered it was good by playing it and making a Let's Play of it, is very well going to not work out, probably, because there seems to be very little promise of that having a very big viewer base when it gets posted. So yeah, it's kind of scary. But oh well, I made it because I wanted to, and if people want to watch it, they'll watch it, and if they don't, they won't, I guess. Yeah. And absolutely nobody watches Control, but that's fine. That wasn't something, it's like an experiment on my end. That's not something that I really expected people to want to watch, so that's fine. I'm not really having that much fun making that Let's Play either, honestly. It's like no big deal that people aren't willing to watch it, because it's like no big deal, just period. That's a PR though. So yeah. Okay, so next thing. Next topic. Composition of images with image magic. So the thumbnail for this video I'm going to add to it, which you've already seen because you've probably already seen the thumbnail, is a picture of this room in World's Hardest Game 3, because I'm not going to make it through this room this session, so, you know, this room's going to describe this session pretty well. Composed on top of it is a sprite from Ever 17 of a character in Ever 17 called Coco Yagami. Okay, it's just Coco. It's one of Coco's sprites. It might be the most iconic sprite, at least to me in the game, besides the Tsugumi smug face. But, so I managed to rather quickly figure out how to compose images using image magic, such that I was able to put a mask over the sprite and able to put a mask around the sprite and get the sprite by itself over, like, with no background, like, on the World's Hardest Game background, and have it sized right so that it like covers the whole top to bottom. The problem is I couldn't get the mask to center. So I had the sprite image with the sprite with a black background, and I could get the sprite image to gravity to the center of the image, but I couldn't figure out how to get the mask to do that. So if I gravitied the sprite to the center of the image, the sprite would be the mask would be left behind. It would look like poop. it would like totally didn't work. So I could only successfully get it to work pinned to upper left. So that's why Coco's sprite is like on the left side of the image in the thumbnail, is I couldn't figure out how to center it. I might still keep working on that and try to figure out maybe a little bit as to how to get character sprites into the thumbnails. The thing is, it's always fun if you have like episodes of a game that has character sprites to put a relevant character sprite to that episode in the thumbnail. A little bit of an issue with that is that I'm a very busy person, and I already get a severe debt of sleep. And that debt of sleep I have, that lack of sleep, is the source of almost 80% of my problems in my life. It's that bad. So, and like nothing else compares in magnitude to like the problems that I have, besides my lack of sleep. And so, I have to be careful about what I burden myself with, right? If I say, okay, I'm gonna start making fancier thumbnails with character sprites, because that's what all the other YouTubers do. Then, and just kind of task myself with doing that now, that's gonna, that little extra task for each upload is going to, I don't know if I necessarily want to give myself that task to do. I don't really have space to put that task. It's a small task, but not really space to put any new tasks. So I can't necessarily guarantee that I'm going to continue to put character sprites in my thumbnails, nor necessarily go back and change the thumbnails on my old Let's Plays to include character sprites. However, that would help get some more clicks because I'd look a little bit more professional in my presentation if I did that. If I was really going for clicks real hard. Okay, that thumbnail is gonna be kind of whack. People are gonna be like, "Why is there's this weird this anime girl in the thumbnail?" When they click on this, and they're not gonna know until several minutes into the recording. I was just practicing my image compositing, and then was just showed off the fruits of my practice in a thumbnail. Most people use Photoshop to do that kind of thing, obviously, but I'm not willing to pay Adobe for Photoshop, so that's why I'm trying to do it in these weird hacky ways. Using lightweight image editing and such. Okay, and what was I going to say about that? Oh, the sprite that I pulled off the internet, because I couldn't figure out how to pull it out of the .dat file in my copy of the game files. The person who pulled the sprite noticed that, and I noticed this too immediately, that there's some edge problems with the sprite as it appears out of the .dat. So there's some bleed of the color outside the outermost edges on the sprite, and of the sprites, that is. And I didn't bother painting it, patching it with paint or anything. But that's kind of interesting. Is there a decoy sprite set in the files? Because yeah, in the game you don't see those artifacts. The sprites look perfect in game. So this seems maybe there's a decoy or something in there. Anyway, I'm not the one who actually did that. The kind of the ugly edges on the sprite that came from the game itself, and yeah. It's some sort of security thing or something they did. Some sort of copyright. So sort of a weird pseudo watermark or something. Okay, finally moving on. So I'm probably gonna have to post on the Ubuntu help forums or something about this, but I have this problem with my computer. It's not a crippling problem, but it's kind of annoying. And that is this. So I have one SSD with a Windows boot partition. And it's a Intel Optane SSD 9 is what it's called. It's a 380 gigabyte NVMe M.2 form factor SSD. And it's PCIe Gen 3 at most. As it's a pretty actual drive part's pretty slow. It's only about 2 gigabits per second read-write sequential, but it has something called an Optane cache, which has has a higher speed than the main body of it, but how fast that cache is, actually, I don't know. I don't know if it actually saturates the bandwidth of the PCIe 3.0 interface or not. It actually goes to full 16 gigabits per second or not, I don't know. It's supposed to be fast, but I don't know how fast it actually is. I also have a drive with a Ubuntu boot on it, and it's a Patriot Viper 4100 1 terabyte drive, and it's compatible with PCIe Gen 3 and Gen 4, and it's a 4/4.5 sequential read-write, 4 gigabits per second. I don't know if that gets cut in half if you're using a PCIe Gen 3 like I am. So it's a very fast drive and might require Gen 4 to be as fast as it can be. So I have these two boots, right? And so when I boot my computer, it boots to the grub menu, and then I can select Ubuntu or Windows, and I've set aside 100 seconds to select which one I want. So okay, cool. I have fast boot turned off in BIOS. I also just today cleared all the security keys. So that's supposed to have turned. You would think that would turn, and that made the settings secure boot disabled in BIOS. However, problem is it didn't seem to apply because when I went to do save and exit, it didn't say I changed anything, which is weird and obscure. It might actually like kept the settings. It may not let me turn off the secure boot. This also, I do have a RAM overclock going, but this problem has also occurred with the RAM at stock settings. And this is the problem. If I boot into Ubuntu, and then I shut down, if I were to boot again, the first time I try to boot, it will hang. It'll hang with, on the motherboard, a postcode AD, which means preparing to load operating system. And it was kind of when the VGA light will be bright white. And this is I'll say what the motherboard is later. Okay, so that's the situation it'll be in. And it'll just hang like that for eternity and never go anywhere. If I press the power button with it in that state, briefly, it'll immediately cut power and shut down. The second time I try to boot, it will then boot successfully and just boot into the grub menu. So it always takes exactly 2 tries to boot it again after shutting it down from Ubuntu, which means I cannot restart it from Ubuntu either. It'll hang and then I have to shut it down and then start it. Right. I believe, although I've tried this a long time, if I power cycle those power supplies, so if I cut the power off of the power supply, then cut it back on, I think I can then actually reboot in 1 try. But I have to like kill the power and then from like the source by turning the switch off on the power supply and turning it back on. Okay, if I shut down out of Windows and I press the power button immediately after shutting down, within a couple seconds afterward, it will boot hang in the same way. If I shut down out of Windows and I wait 10 seconds before booting it again, it will boot successfully. So if I shut down out of Ubuntu, it always takes 2 tries to boot again. If I shut down from Windows, it takes me 1 to 2 tries depending on how quickly after it's shut down I hit the power button. If I wait long enough, I can boot successfully in 1 try if I wait long enough after shutting down. But I can't ever do a restart because it never waits long enough on a restart, so it will always hang on a restart. I always have to shut it down all the way and then boot it again from shut down. I have no idea what's causing this, but it's kind of annoying. It's not fatal. I can always reliably skip back into an operating system. I can always successfully boot and post on my second try every single time. So it's like I can always get it booted. So it's like there's nothing fatal about this problem. It's just it sometimes can take me 2 tries to get it to work. And I can't do a reboot. So if I do a Windows update, it's always going to go into a hang state, and then I have to like shut it down out of the hang state. Weird. Yeah, so the motherboard, because that's kind of relevant, is an Asus X299-A Roman numeral 2. So it's a Prime series, it's one of their low-end boards. And the VGA, which is relevant, is a EVGA RTX 3090 FTW3 Ultra. And the RAM is Patriot Viper Steel, 2 2x16 kits, so a total of 64 gigabytes total, 1 in each of the 4 channels. 3600 megahertz, I forgot what the timings are. And it's actually set at that frequency and timing, and tested timings. Which means I have to overclock the system agent to get that to work. But even with the memory at stock speeds, it's at like the 2933 megahertz speeds, this problem still happens. I've had memory instability cause boots to not happen in the past. This doesn't appear to be what this is. Yeah, so that's kind of annoying. And then, lastly, again, if anybody knows if anybody's found a flashpoint or something, or on the Wayback Machine. The Wayback Machine preserves Minol, but which the Metro Nui online game, the Bionicle fan game from 2005, Minol for short. If someone's found that on Flashpoint or something like that, please let me know. I like to Let's Play that and do so immediately. It is on the Wayback Machine. The problem is it doesn't actually work on the Wayback Machine. So the Web Archive, you can find it on the Web Archive, but it doesn't actually work on the Web Archive, unfortunately. So that's not really an option. It's just kind of like, it looks tantalizing, it looks like it's going to work, and you actually try to play the game and it doesn't. Discovering more ways to get to that double grid weave, but I can't replicate them on my second try. Okay, I think that covers it. Yeah, so this was a short one. I obviously did not get through this room. It's gonna take me a while, a very long time to get through this room. That's all the topics I wanted to come up with. Anyway, so good progress on the Korean. And that was the main thing. And some progress on image compositing is what I like to report, basically. And Ever 17 is a good game, and you should try to play it. The full title is Ever 17, The Out of Infinity. Anyway, well, I got to that center. I got up here to this, like, place, but I didn't get through it. I didn't get back. So, some progress was made in that sense. I'm going to stop recording now because I have to eat. So, I'm going to stop recording and eat. If you watched that for some reason, thanks for watching it.